Just ahead on American Black Journal, local activists call for a change in leadership at the Michigan State Police after the death of a black teenager and a controversial social media post. Plus, a milestone anniversary for a group that brings together women of different faiths. Stay right there. American Black Journal starts now.
American Black Journal is funded by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, a partner with communities where children come first.
How does diversity bring energy to us all? At DTE Energy, we believe that it's the contributions of all that build great communities. As a company, we grow stronger by welcoming the unique perspectives of everyone. As community members, we support our state's broad culture and heritage. From working closely with women and minority-owned suppliers to embracing our local cultures, DTE Energy is powering diversity. The DTE Energy Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit Public Television. Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta Faucets, Craft-Made in Merillat cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
For Fun gave me a scholarship to help me attend Eastern Michigan University. I developed a passion for engineering at an early age. It started off with something as simple as fixing bikes. I didn't know anything about a bike shop or where I could go to get it fixed, so I just kind of had to play around with it myself. You can't really do everything on your own, so with even the smallest amount of help, just a little push, it can get you to where you need to be.
Welcome to American Black Journal. I'm Stephen Henderson. Controversy continues to surround the Michigan State Police and its director, Colonel Christy Etchew. She is under fire for a social media post that called NFL players degenerates for sitting or kneeling during the national anthem. Etchew is also under attack for the death of a 15-year-old black youth who crashed his ATV after he was tasered by a state trooper in a moving patrol car. A protest is scheduled outside State Police headquarters on Monday. Joining me now is rally organizer Reverend David Bullock. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So this is a really, I think, interesting controversy in the sense that it just is not, I think it's something that's not going to go away. I think that's a good thing. But talk about the focus on Christy Etchew at the center of this and what you want to see happen.
Well, let's put it into national context. The police misconduct conversation has been a conversation we've been having for some time. I mean, Mike Brown, Eric Gardner, Daisha Miller, Sandra Bland, and whether it's Black Lives Matter or I Can't Breathe, there has been momentum in the country to try to figure out how do we reform and sensitize police officers and law enforcement agencies. Okay, so now fast forward to Damon Grimes being tased while on the ATV on Detroit's east side by a Michigan State police officer who was at least 2 times before involved in potentially legal issues around excessive force. And then let's add the layer of the colonel of the Michigan State Police going on Facebook and taking a page from the president and attacking American citizens that, at least in the state of Michigan, she's sworn to protect and serve for exercising their rights. The last time I checked, police officers, law enforcement agencies, law enforcement officers, the Michigan State Police colonel and everyone in that agency were supposed to protect our rights, not call us degenerates for exercising those rights. And so I think if you talk about the racial insensitivity, the question of diversity in the Michigan State Police, and then layer that post during the timing of a conversation about whether or not race played into the police misconduct on the east side of Detroit. I mean, this is just bad business. In fact, this is beyond bad business. This is somebody probably who shouldn't be in that business.
And the concern is, of course, that her words, even though they were her personal words, she didn't do it at work, but by saying that, she's communicating, not so subtly, in fact, to the troopers who work for her, that it's okay to think of some people as different than others when they are expressing their rights.
That's right.
And that's incredibly dangerous when you're talking about a law enforcement agency.
That's right. Well, not just different, they're degenerates.
They're degenerates, right.
I think the ad hominem is always the sign of a small intelligence and a flabby brain. Ad hominem, you know, the arguing about someone's character, right? You know, well, they're a drunk, don't listen to them. Well, if they say the earth is not flat, it doesn't matter if they're drunk, they're right. So to have someone at that high level of leadership reduce people exercising their rights to degenerates. It would have been one thing for her to go to Facebook and say, my personal opinion is don't take a knee, or my personal opinion is that's disrespectful of the flag. I think those are different statements, right? But she intentionally attacked the character of NFL players and others, children, right, who are playing PAL football, children that are in schools, maybe sitting or deciding not to stand. I mean, I think it sends the wrong message, and it says something about the culture of the Michigan State Police.
Yeah. As usual, you've got some double standards that I think at work here as well. The governor says he won't fire her, didn't even feel like he needed to say anything about, well, I wouldn't have said that, or I hope she doesn't do it again. And I always come back to, let's change the faces and the situation here. If you had an African-American chief of the state police who, for instance, said this same thing about people exercising their Second Amendment rights, walking around with open guns, the open carry law, I don't think we would be having this conversation. I think that person would be gone. And that's one of the frustrations, I think, that that sort of attends this controversy.
Definitely. I think the racial lens is very, very relevant here. People always say, you know, people are playing their race card too much. But I would agree with you. If this were an African-American female or an African-American male who was the colonel of the Michigan State Police, off with their head. If this were a black officer in a predominantly white municipality who tased a young white boy or girl while they were on a moving ATV out of their window, I mean, this would be a no-brainer. And so I think we definitely have to look at the racial lens here and say there really is very little room for trying to negotiate what these words on Facebook mean and what happened on the east side of the city of Detroit.
I wonder if you worry that she has become the issue more than the sort of institutional and systemic infrastructure here. I had an interesting conversation with Sherry Gay Danyogo, who's one of the members of the Legislative Black Caucus this week, and she said, look, she's very upset with at you for what she said. She thinks it was inappropriate, but she doesn't want to have that get lost in the conversation about what needs to change at MSP. And you know, I think that's something we always have to stop and think about. Is the goal here removing her, or is there a bigger goal that could maybe even have her in place, which I think Sherry Gay Danyogo has said she doesn't mind, but would address all of these other issues?
Yeah, you know, it's always amazing to me that people who are in elected office seem to have an intellectual blindness. I think Sherry just has this wrong. Look, this isn't a zero-sum game, you know.
It's not an either-or.
Right. We can multitask here. You can call for the resignation of the colonel and call for reform in the Michigan State Police Law Enforcement Agency. And you can do those things at the same time, and we don't have to act like somehow we're going to confuse the issue. I don't think the issues are confused at all. I think it's very strange that an African-American woman who is a mother, can't understand how the black community, after, you know, the Mike Brown, the Eric Garner, the Adacia Miller, the Ayanna Joneses, I mean, there's a trajectory here. And then let's remember that those degenerates, as they were referred to, were not taking the knee against the anthem or the flag.
That has also been
taking the knee against police misconduct. So this is about
the issue.
Police misconduct. And I think actually the state rep in this case is probably muddying the waters and muddling the conversation to try to make it seem like this is a personal attack against the colonel when it's not.
So then let me ask you, what course of action do you think will be necessary to make something happen here? I mean, the Legislative Black Caucus met with Etchu. They emerged frustrated, but Etchu said she's still not resigning. The governor's not doing anything, but they are working with her on a number of things that they said the state police could do. That's the right approach, right?
Well, I think the right approach is working with the governor to reform Michigan State Police. I don't think you have to work with the colonel. I think the colonel should resign. Obviously, Governor Snyder said he's not going to get rid of her. I remember going to see Dan Wyatt at the beginning or in the middle of the Flint water crisis, and looking him in the eye, face to face, man to man, and asking him to resign as a show of good faith to people that they can still trust their government. I think that should be the conversation. How do we continue to
How do we restore
people's trust in the Michigan State Police, in Flint, in Benton Harbor, in Detroit, where the high-speed chases have led to fatalities and to children having brain trauma, where Damon Grimes's life was snuffed out by a zealous
really
cop, a reckless cop, right? So the conversation should be resign as a sign of symbolism that the Michigan State Police really care about all citizens in the state of Michigan, and that they don't see any citizens as degenerates or as citizens that can be displaced. I think that should be the conversation, and the Michigan Legislative Black Caucus should be pushing that narrative to the governor and say, hey, here are the reforms, but we don't need the colonel in place to exercise these reforms.
Yeah, and you feel like the protest has a shot at achieving those things? I mean, have you been able to get a response from the governor or from other folks?
Well, I think the protest does have a shot at achieving that. I think media does work in these cases.
Sure.
When they were going to close the schools in Benton Harbor, Detroit, Highland Park, we went to the school reform office, and we got that stopped to have a longer conversation about how we fix education, but don't just close the schools willy-nilly.
Right.
Again, we went to see Dan Wyatt. He ended up resigning. I think the highlighting the issue, highlighting the Facebook post, highlighting Damon Grimes will push us closer to getting some traction with respect to the colonel's decision to resign, and also will help the Michigan Black Legislative Caucus actually get reforms in place. If they don't have a groundswell of support from the grassroots of the community, they're talking in the governor's office or in Lansing really is just an echo. And so I think actually what we're doing on Monday is a part of a larger strategy. I would hope that the state rep and others would see it that way.
Okay. Reverend David Bullock, always good to see you.
Always good to be here.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Coming up next, a women's group that's breaking down barriers between different religions. But first, we continue our look back at the 1967 rebellion with the Detroit Historical Society's Oral History Project. Here's journalist Eric Smith.
As those days wore on, I saw tanks rolling down West Grand Boulevard. I see in my mind these tanks rumbling by Henry Ford Hospital. I see National Guardsmen up on 12th Street or Linwood. There was a little girl, and I hope I've got her name right, Tanya Blanding, I believe her name was, who was sitting with her father in an apartment window up on, I'm pretty sure it was Linwood. And these young National Guardsmen were frightened to be in this place. And Tanya's father lit a cigarette in that window, and they thought it was sniper fire, and they opened fire with 50 caliber machine guns on this. That's stuff you don't forget, and that little girl died. I saw others die. I was dispatched to the Algiers Motel. John Hersey wrote a great book about what happened at the Algiers Motel. I will go to my death believing police officers killed the kids at that motel. They were later tried in an all-white little city, Mason, Michigan, for the homicides that took place there. They were acquitted, but how do you not look back on that and not be affected by it?
10 years ago, 4 Detroit area women from different faiths came together to form an organization called W.I.S.D.O.M. The name stands for Women's Interfaith Solutions for Dialogue and Outreach in Metro Detroit. That is a mouthful. I like the acronym better. Their goal is to educate people on various religions and cultures in order to dispel myths and misunderstandings and to create a space for peace. Joining me now are 4 members of W.I.S.D.O.M, the group's president, Peggy Dahlberg, representing the Christian faith, Samina Basha of the Islamic religion, Dolores Lyons, who is a Buddhist, and Terry Weingarten, who is Jewish. Welcome to American Black Journal.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. So 10 years of this, that's a really long time and very impressive. Tell me how this all just sort of started out.
Well, I think Peggy would be the best to tell you that, because she's the longest member.
You go ahead.
There were 4 women who were getting together over coffee, and they were talking, and they were different faith traditions, and they decided that it would be a good idea to do this on a regular basis so that people could get together with each other and get to know each other, and just dispel all those stereotypes and things like that.
And that's the best way to do it, right? Is to sit in a room, maybe around a table, maybe with some food. I always like that too,
Always yeah.
And just get to know each other, as opposed to sort of proceeding along the sort of perceptions that we have of each other that sometimes are wrong.
And we have a program within W.I.S.D.O.M that we call 5 Women, 5 Journeys, whereas we go to various schools, businesses, churches, anybody who will have us. And, and we talk about, we discuss what our faiths are. People are real curious. How did you go from Baptist to Buddhist, and we dispel or at least explain what our religions and beliefs are, and how we function in society that way.
Samina, it's a really, I think, interesting and somewhat anxiety-ridden time, I guess, to be Muslim in America. I would imagine that being a part of a group like this, though, maybe gives you a different kind of outlet, a different way to deal with those anxieties.
Yeah, Stephen, I think this was a godsend. I joined very recently, in fact, a couple of years ago, and during the election season, we had some high anxiety.
I'll bet.
Yeah, situations. My daughter's in high school, and there were some incidents, and I really felt like W.I.S.D.O.M and my sisters here were not just my friends, but they were a resource. They had so many ideas of, well, why don't you, diversity initiatives within schools, or why don't you try this, and from journalism and media, there's so many connections. There's a lot of shoulders that you get to stand on and really benefit. So I really appreciated that.
One of the things I think is interesting about religion is that it's so personal, and it's one of the ways, one of the sort of fundamental ways that we define ourselves. And so in one way, I think sometimes it's harder to relate to people of different religions because of that. But it also makes it a little easier once you can get past that sort of idea of other, right? This is my belief. It's okay that somebody else has a different belief, and I can actually find commonality around those things.
And we've actually found so many similarities. My daughter teased me one day and she said, "Mom, are you going to become a Muslim?" She said, "Because you love going to the Muslim Unity Center and you have so many Muslim friends." I said, "Honey, I never realized how similar our religions are. Islam is such a beautiful religion." And actually the Abrahamic faiths, so Islam, Christianity, and Judaism are all very, very similar. In fact, we were having a discussion recently, and there are so few differences. There's a couple stories where maybe my religion thinks it's one person and another religion thinks it's another person, but they're very, very similar. So you find this commonality. And in the 5 Women's 5 Journeys that Dolores was speaking about, what I've found as I go through those, we realize that we're all so similar. Like, a lot of us had very similar experiences growing up, especially if religion wasn't important in our family. And for me, the differences were really more typical differences that you would find. Like, obviously, I'm different than my mom and people in her generation, so the differences were really more socioeconomic or age. They really weren't. There weren't that many religious differences in the upbringing of the different women on the panel. I found that very enlightening.
Yeah, that is really interesting. In a minute, I want to talk about the book that you guys have out, but I want to get you to talk some about what you feel like you've achieved over 10 years. What's different because of W.I.S.D.O.M being around?
I think, okay, and I'm a more recent member over the last couple of years, and I think that what Terry was saying, that when we do the 5 Women, 5 Journeys, when we talk with each other, we really see the similarities. Because, like for me, as a Buddhist, you know, I look at like some of the rituals in our service are very Catholic, you know. And I mean, you have people and think that Buddhists worship statues. Well, no, we don't. You know, but then you have the statues in the Catholic Church. You have the prostrations in the Catholic Church. Just a lot of the chanting. A lot of things are similar. And then we learn so much when various people or members of our group get together and do the 5 Women, 5 Journeys. And then when we go out and share that, people see how we come together. We're more like the different.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I also feel like, although these are trying times, but I do feel like people are more willing to cross barriers, and I feel like at least the Muslim community, we tend to be more on the insular side, whether it's culturally or ethnically, and I feel like wisdom provides that vehicle to be able to sort of step out of your comfort zone and come out, meet somebody who's different from you but shares that deep-rooted value system. So I think, and maybe if you're asking what's changed about wisdom, I think that willingness for people to take that risk and kind of, okay, I'm gonna maybe talk to the other, because, and also the fact that I have wisdom and the experience with it to kind of back me up and make me feel like I can go to other places and still be welcomed or appreciated, or at least to be able to converse with somebody and try to get them to understand your point of view. Yeah, that's practice.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the book here. Friendship and Faith, The Wisdom of Women Creating Alliances for Peace. That's a pretty cool title.
It is, and it's a story. We interviewed 40 people, I think, 43 people, and had them kind of just tell their stories of their faith experience. And they're all in there, and they're fascinating, and some are kind of shocking, because people have gone through things that aren't nice, you know, and that you expect in America in this, century, this decade, that would not be the case. But there are some pretty shocking, things in there. But it's really interesting just to see everybody.
Right.
You learn about other people, and that's like we were saying, you're not that much different.
Yeah, and I think in talking about I guess you and I are in the book. So we in my case, I talk about a cultural difference. I was raised Baptist. Right. And people will say, well, what made you go Buddhist? But it wasn't like, okay, I'm converted. It was an evolution. And it's not that I reject anything. I've brought it as part of my spiritual practice. Plus, I also observe Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So they call me a Jubu. But I find the commonality, so we talk about that in the book, in each person's experience, culturally and religiously.
And the friendships. And that's a big basis. That's the big basis for us with wisdom. We're not just women sitting on a board. We're friends. And these are my dearest friends. And so if I'm going through a good time, a bad time, if I have a question, if I'm being faced in my own daily life with somebody who maybe has some ignorance, and I want to know, how do I respond? I can call one of my friends and say, I had this experience and this is what I said. Was this the right thing to say? How do I help other people be more open-minded? And you build that with a deep friendship. And we talk about that a lot in the book too. We talk about, interfaith friendships that maybe we had growing up and how that influenced us. So I think not only are the stories fascinating, but there's that interweaving of the friendships in it. It's really a beautiful, beautiful book.
Well, congratulations on 10 years, and here's to 10 more. And we'll have you back then, right? At least 10 more.
Definitely more.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
All right, that's our program for today. Thanks for watching. For more information about our guest, you can go to AmericanBlackJournal.org. And as always, you can connect with us on Facebook and on Twitter. We'll see you next time.
As American Black Journal looks ahead at the next 50 years, we want to hear from you, the viewers. Tell us what you think of this program and what you'd like to see on future episodes. Visit AmericanBlackJournal.org to take a quick survey and share your opinion. Thank you.
American Black Journal is funded by the W.K. Foundation, a partner with communities where children come first.
How does diversity bring energy to us all? At DTE Energy, we believe that it's the contributions of all that build great communities. As a company, we grow stronger by welcoming the unique perspectives of everyone. As community members, we support our state's broad culture and heritage. From working closely with women and minority-owned suppliers to embracing our local cultures, DTE Energy is powering diversity. The DTE Energy Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit Public Television. Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta faucets, craft-made in Merillat cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
W.I.S.D.O.M gave me a scholarship to help me attend Eastern Michigan University. I developed a passion for engineering at an early age. It started off with something as simple as fixing bikes. I didn't know anything about a bike shop or where I could go to get it fixed, so I just kind of had to play around with it myself. You can't really do everything on your own, so with even the smallest amount of help, just a little push, it can get you to where you need to be.